My daughter said the cameras were for my protection after my fall, but when I accidentally opened the family group chat, I saw months of messages mocking everything I did. My morning coffee routine, the way I talked to my plants, even how I walked to the mailbox. They had been watching me like a reality show, rating my performances and sharing screenshots with laughing emojis. I was 67 years old, recovering from a broken hip, and my own family had turned my vulnerability into entertainment. What they didn't know was that the cameras captured more than just me. And the person who helped me expose them was someone they had forbidden me from ever contacting again, someone they thought was long gone from my life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I never imagined that accepting help from my daughter would become the biggest mistake of my life. But that's exactly what happened on a cold February morning, when I slipped on black ice outside my small cottage in Riverside and shattered my hip in 3 places. The surgery was successful, but recovery at 77 years old wasn't something the doctors sugar-coated. 6 months minimum before I'd walk without assistance, they said. Possibly longer given my age and the severity of the fracture. My daughter Vanessa arrived at the hospital with her husband Derek before I was even out of recovery. I remember waking up groggy from anesthesia to find them standing over my bed, Vanessa's face arranged in an expression of concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. Derek stood slightly behind her, checking his phone every few seconds like he had somewhere more important to be. "Mom, we've been talking, and we think it's best if you don't go back to living alone," Vanessa said, squeezing my hand with perfectly manicured fingers. "The cottage is too isolated, too many stairs, too many risks. What if you fall again and no one finds you for hours or days?" The fear in her voice seemed genuine enough that I didn't question it. My cottage was indeed isolated, sitting on 2 acres at the end of a gravel road with my nearest neighbor half a mile away. It was the home I'd shared with my late husband Bernard for 40 years, the place where I'd raised Vanessa and her younger brother Marcus, the garden where I'd spent countless peaceful hours among my roses and tomatoes. But Vanessa was right about the stairs. There were 7 steps up to the front porch and a steep staircase inside leading to the bedrooms. In my current condition, those stairs might as well have been Mount Everest. "What are you suggesting?" I asked, my voice still thick from the medication. "We want you to move in with us, at least temporarily," Vanessa said quickly. "We have that ground floor guest suite that's perfect. No stairs, close to everything you need, and Derek and I can keep an eye on you while you recover." I hesitated. Vanessa and Derek lived in Westridge Estates, one of those planned communities where every house looked vaguely the same, and the homeowners association had rules about what color you could paint your mailbox. It was a 40-minute drive from my cottage, far from my garden and the few friends I still had in Riverside. But more than that, something about the offer made me uneasy. Vanessa and I had never been particularly close, not in the warm, confiding way I'd always hoped a mother and daughter would be. She'd always been more interested in social status and appearances than in genuine connection. Even as a child, she'd been embarrassed by our modest lifestyle, by my second-hand furniture and homemade clothes. "I don't want to be a burden," I said carefully. "You won't be," Derek interjected, finally looking up from his phone. "We're happy to help. Besides, it's only temporary, right? Just until you're back on your feet." There was something in the way he emphasized temporary that should have warned me, but the pain medication was making everything fuzzy around the edges. I was scared of being alone, scared of falling again with no one to help me, scared of becoming completely helpless in my own home. So I agreed. The first week at Vanessa and Derek's house was actually pleasant. The guest suite was comfortable, with a hospital bed they'd rented and an adjoining bathroom with grab bars already installed. Vanessa brought me meals on a tray, helped me with physical therapy exercises, and seemed genuinely attentive to my needs. Derek mostly stayed out of the way, which was fine by me. We'd never had much to say to each other anyway. It was during the second week that Vanessa brought up the cameras. "Mom, Derek and I have been thinking," she said one morning as she helped me into the wheelchair for my daily trip to the living room. "We can't be here every moment of the day. Derek has work, I have my charity committee meetings, and we worry about leaving you alone. What if something happens while we're gone?" "I have the medical alert button," I reminded her, touching the pendant around my neck that would summon emergency services if I pressed it. "I know, but that only helps if you're conscious enough to press it. What if you have a stroke or a heart attack?" What if you fall and hit your head? She paused for effect, letting those terrifying possibilities sink in. We think it would be best to install some security cameras, just in the main areas where you spend time. The guest suite, the bathroom, the living room. That way we can check on you remotely throughout the day, make sure you're safe. Cameras in the bathroom? The idea made me deeply uncomfortable, but Vanessa was quick to reassure me. Just in the corner by the door, angled toward the grab bars. Nothing invasive, I promise. It's purely for safety. If you slip getting in or out of the shower, we'll know immediately and can help you. The logic seemed sound, and I was still very much dependent on them for everything from meals to medication management. My independence had been stripped away by the fall, and I felt vulnerable in a way I never had before. So once again I agreed. Derek installed the cameras that same afternoon. Small black domes mounted in the corners of rooms, their little red lights blinking steadily to show they were recording. He showed me how they worked, pulling up the app on his phone to demonstrate the crystal clear video feed. "See, totally harmless," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just think of it as having a guardian angel watching over you." I tried to think of it that way. I really did. But there was something about those unblinking camera eyes that made me feel exposed in my own space, or rather, in their space where I was merely a temporary guest. I found myself being self-conscious about everything. The way I moved, the way I dressed even in my own room, the private moments that everyone deserves to keep private. Still, I told myself it was a small price to pay for safety and for the peace of mind it supposedly gave Vanessa and Derek. The change in their behavior was subtle at first. Little smirks when they thought I wasn't looking. Vanessa and Derek exchanging glances across the dinner table when I struggled to cut my food with my arthritis-gnarled hands. Once, I could have sworn I heard muffled laughter coming from their bedroom when I shuffled past on my walker late at night, heading to the bathroom. Then there were the comments. Vanessa started making little observations that felt pointed, almost cruel. "Mom, I noticed you talk to yourself quite a bit when you're alone. Is that something new? Or, you've developed this interesting little routine with your morning coffee. Very particular about it, aren't you?" I didn't understand what she meant. I'd always talk to myself occasionally the way people who live alone tend to do. And yes, I had a specific way I liked my coffee prepared, the same way I'd been making it for 50 years. What was strange about that? But the way Vanessa said it made me feel like I was doing something wrong, something worth mocking. Derek was worse in some ways. He started calling me ma'am instead of by my name, his tone dripping with false respect that felt more like condescension. "Can I get you anything, ma'am? Are you comfortable there, ma'am?" He'd say it with this little smile playing at the corners of his mouth, like he was enjoying a private joke. I tried to dismiss my growing unease as paranoia, as the natural result of feeling dependent and vulnerable. Old people get paranoid, I told myself. You're being oversensitive. They're helping you, for heaven's sake. Be grateful. So I pushed down my discomfort and tried to focus on my physical therapy, on getting stronger, on the day when I could finally return to my cottage and my garden and my privacy. That day came sooner than expected, but not in the way I'd hoped. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late April, 3 months into my stay at Vanessa and Derek's house. I was in the living room, practicing walking with my cane under the watchful eye of my physical therapist, when Vanessa's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She'd left it there when she went to answer the door for a package delivery. The screen lit up with a notification, and I glanced at it automatically, the way you do when a phone makes noise near you. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was a message in a group chat called The Margaret Show, and the preview text read, "OMG, she's doing the plant talking thing again. I'm dying. Margaret." That was my name. The Margaret Show. They'd named a group chat after me. My hand started shaking so badly I nearly dropped my cane. My physical therapist, a kind woman named Jennifer, noticed immediately and helped me sit down, asking if I was feeling dizzy or in pain. I told her I was fine, just tired. Could we cut the session short today? She agreed, though she looked concerned. After Jennifer left, I sat there staring at Vanessa's phone, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might actually have the heart attack Vanessa had used to justify the cameras. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew it was a violation of privacy. But something deep in my gut told me I needed to see what was in that chat, needed to know what my own daughter was saying about me behind my back. When Vanessa returned from signing for the package, I pretended to be dozing in my chair. She grabbed her phone without really looking at me and disappeared into her home office for one of her committee calls. The moment I heard her door close, I wheeled myself to the guest suite and retrieved my own phone with trembling hands. I'd never been particularly tech-savvy, but Bernard had taught me the basics before he died, and our grandson Lucas had helped me set up my smartphone a few years back. I knew how to use basic functions, how to text, how to check email. What I didn't know was how to access other people's group chats. But I did know Vanessa's passcode. She'd given it to me weeks ago in case I needed to use her phone in an emergency. She'd probably forgotten about that. I waited until that evening, when Vanessa and Derek went out for dinner with friends. They'd invited me, but I'd declined, saying I was too tired. The truth was, I needed time alone with Vanessa's phone. She'd left it charging in the kitchen.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Confident in her world where I was just a helpless old woman who could barely work her own device, let alone snoop through someone else's. My hand shook as I entered her passcode. The phone unlocked on the first try. I navigated to her messages, my heart racing so fast I felt lightheaded. There it was, The Margaret Show, with a little camera emoji next to the name. The last message had been sent 2 hours ago. Another gem from this afternoon, watch her try to reach the remote. Oscar-worthy performance. I opened the chat. What I found there destroyed something fundamental inside me. There were dozens of messages going back months, all the way to the week after the cameras were installed. Vanessa, Derek, and for other people I didn't immediately recognize were in the chat. As I scrolled through, I realized 2 of them were Vanessa's friends from her country club, Amanda and Stephanie. The other 2 were Derek's brother Colin and his wife Patricia. The messages were a catalog of cruelty, a running commentary on my daily life presented as entertainment. They'd been watching me through the cameras and sharing their observations like I was a character in some twisted reality show they created for their amusement. She's watering the plants again and having a full conversation with them about the weather. Does she think they can hear her? This from Vanessa, followed by a crying laughing emoji from Amanda. The way she struggles with the TV remote is hilarious. She presses every button except the right one. Maybe we should get her a Fisher-Price version. Derek's contribution, accompanied by a video clip of me fumbling with the complicated universal remote they had, trying to figure out how to change the channel. In the video, you could hear me muttering in frustration. The chat had responded with more laughing emojis. I spent an hour scrolling through that chat, each message a fresh wound. They'd mocked the way I walked slow and careful with my cane. They'd made fun of my careful coffee ritual each morning. The way I'd measure the grounds precisely and wait for the water to reach the exact right temperature. Bernard and I had always made coffee that way. It was one of my few remaining connections to him, a small morning ceremony that brought me comfort. To them it was comedy gold. There were screenshots of me dozing in my chair, mouth open, with captions like "Glamour shots by Margaret and America's Next Top Model contestant." There were clips of me doing my physical therapy exercises, struggling with movements that were painful and difficult, accompanied by commentary comparing me to various animals or making jokes about my age and frailty. But the worst ones, the ones that made me feel truly violated, were from the bathroom camera. Despite Vanessa's promises that it was angled only toward the safety bars, that it was purely for medical emergencies, they'd apparently been watching me there too. There were messages about how long I took in the shower, jokes about old people and bodily functions, commentary on my naked body that made me feel sick to my stomach. "She's been in there for 20 minutes. Think she fell asleep standing up?" Colin's message followed by, "Maybe she's waiting for the water to get hot enough to brew her precious coffee." The entire chat was a masterclass in casual cruelty, in the way people dehumanize others when they think no one is watching. Except they were the ones watching. Watching me, cataloging my vulnerabilities, turning my recovery process into entertainment, sharing my most private moments with their friends for laughs. I sat there in the darkening guest suite, Vanessa's phone glowing in my lap, and cried for the first time since Bernard's funeral 5 years ago. Not gentle tears but deep, wrenching sobs that hurt my healing hip and made my chest ache. How could she? How could my own daughter do this to me? The child I'd carried, raised, loved unconditionally despite all her flaws and selfishness. The girl I'd sacrificed for, worked extra shifts to pay for her private school, sold Bernard's antique coin collection to help fund her wedding. This was how she repaid that love. By turning me into a joke, by violating my privacy in the most intimate ways, by inviting others to join in mocking the woman who'd given her life. But as I sat there crying, something else started growing alongside the hurt. Something harder, colder. Anger. Not the hot, impulsive anger that fades quickly, but the kind that settles deep in your bones and calcifies into determination. They thought I was helpless, pathetic, nothing more than entertainment. They thought I had no options, no power, nowhere to go. They were wrong. I took screenshots of everything. Every cruel message, every mocking video, every invasion of my privacy. I sent them all to my own email address, then carefully deleted the evidence of my snooping from Vanessa's phone. I put it back exactly where I'd found it, still plugged in and charging in the kitchen. Then I went back to the guest suite and made a phone call I should have made years ago. A call to someone Vanessa had explicitly forbidden me from contacting. Someone she'd written off as unworthy of our family. Someone she tried to erase from our lives completely. I called my son. Marcus. Marcus, my younger child, the boy who'd been sensitive and artistic in everything Vanessa considered weak. She'd bullied him mercilessly growing up, and that bullying had continued into adulthood. When Marcus came out as gay at 22, Vanessa's contempt had turned into open hostility. When he'd introduced us to his partner, James, Vanessa had refused to attend their commitment ceremony, citing some vague excuse about conflicting plans. The final break had come 3 years ago, at Bernard's funeral. Vanessa had made a scene, telling Marcus that his lifestyle was an embarrassment to the family, that he should have the decency not to bring his partner to their father's funeral. I'd been too deep in grief to intervene properly, too overwhelmed by losing Bernard to stand up to Vanessa the way I should have. Marcus had left that day, and Vanessa had informed me in no uncertain terms that if I wanted to maintain a relationship with her and have access to my granddaughter Emily, I needed to cut ties with Marcus. I'd made the wrong choice. God help me, I'd made the wrong choice. I'd let Vanessa bully me into cutting off my own son, into choosing her over him. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd fix things once emotions cooled down. But months turned into years and I'd been too much of a coward to reach out, too afraid of Vanessa's wrath, too dependent on her being my only remaining close family. Marcus had tried to contact me a few times in the first year, but I'd been weak. I'd let Vanessa intercept his calls, delete his messages, convince me that having a relationship with both of my children was impossible. Now, sitting in that guest suite with the camera eye watching me from the corner, with the evidence of Vanessa's cruelty fresh in my mind, I finally found the courage I should have had 3 years ago. The phone rang 4 times. I was about to give up, assuming he'd blocked my number, when a familiar voice answered. Hello? He sounded wary, uncertain, and my heart broke all over again. Marcus, it's Mom. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought he'd hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled, emotionally distant in a way that hurt more than anger would have. Mom, what do you want? I deserve that, I said, tears starting again. I deserve your anger and your coldness and whatever else you want to throw at me. I was a coward, Marcus. I chose wrong 3 years ago, and I've regretted it every single day since. Another pause. Then why are you calling now? Because I need help. And because I finally found the courage to do what I should have done 3 years ago, which is tell Vanessa to go to hell and beg you to forgive me. I heard him take a sharp breath. Where are you? Are you okay? So I told him everything. The fall, the surgery, moving in with Vanessa and Derek, the cameras, and finally the group chat. I told him about the months of mockery, the invasion of my privacy, the way they turned my recovery into entertainment. I told him I'd been wrong to choose Vanessa over him, that I'd been weak and stupid and I understood if he couldn't forgive me. When I finished, there was another long silence. Then Marcus said, I'm coming to get you right now. Give me the address. Marcus, it's 8 o'clock at night and you live in Seattle. That's a 3-hour drive. I don't care if it's a 3-day drive. My mother needs me and I'm coming to get her. His voice cracked slightly. I've waited 3 years to hear from you, Mom. 3 years of wondering if you were okay. If you ever thought about me. If you regretted cutting me out of your life. I'm not waiting another minute. Your sister won't like it, I warned him, though the words felt hollow even as I said them. I don't give a damn what Vanessa likes. She's had you under her thumb for too long. And from what you've just told me, she's not the person you thought she was. Hell, she's not the person any of us thought she was. This is beyond sibling rivalry, Mom. This is abuse. The word hit me like a physical blow. Abuse. I'd been thinking of it as cruelty, as mockery, as a betrayal. But Marcus was right. Installing cameras under the guise of safety, and then using them to violate someone's privacy, to mock them, to share their most vulnerable moments with others for entertainment. That was abuse. I'm scared, I admit it. I don't know what will happen when she finds out I'm leaving. You don't have to be scared anymore. James and I are packing right now. We'll be there by midnight. Don't tell Vanessa we're coming. Just pack whatever you absolutely need, and be ready to leave when we get there. Can you do that? Yes, I whispered. And Marcus, I'm so sorry. I know, Mom. We'll have time to talk about all of it later. Right now, let's just focus on getting you out of there. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of the guest suite, the camera's red light blinking steadily in the corner. I wondered if they were watching me right now, if my emotional breakdown was being live-streamed to the Margaret show. The thought should have made me feel more violated, but instead, it filled me with a strange sense of calm. Let them watch. Let them see me packing my things, getting ready to leave. Let them wonder what I was doing, where I thought I was going. They'd find out soon enough. And when they did, their perfect little reality show was going to get a plot twist they never saw coming. I started gathering my belongings, moving as quietly as I could despite my cane. My clothes, my medications, the few personal items I'd brought from the cottage. The framed photo of Bernard that I kept on the nightstand. My mother's silver bracelet that I wore every day. The small leather journal where I'd been writing down my thoughts during recovery. Everything fit into the 2 suitcases I'd arrived with 3 months ago. It wasn't much, but it was mine. As I packed, I thought about what came next. Marcus and James would take me to Seattle, at least. Temporarily. We'd have to figure out the logistics of my continued recovery, of getting me back to my cottage eventually, of managing my medical appointments. But those were problems for tomorrow. Tonight, I was leaving. Tomorrow, Vanessa would discover I was gone, and would have to face the consequences of treating another human being like a circus animal for her entertainment. Marcus and James arrived at exactly 11:47, 13 minutes earlier than Marcus had estimated. I was sitting in the darkened living room, my 2 suitcases packed and waiting by the door, my cane resting across my lap. I'd turned off all the lights except for a small lamp in the corner, and I sat facing away from the camera mounted on the wall. If they were watching and I had to assume someone might be, I didn't want them to see my face, to read my expression, to know what was about to happen. Vanessa and Derek had returned from their dinner around 10:30, laughing about something as they came through the door. They'd barely glanced at me sitting there in the semi-darkness before heading to their bedroom. I heard their door close, heard the television click on, heard the familiar sounds of them settling in for the night. They had no idea their carefully constructed world was about to shatter. When I saw headlights pull into the driveway, my heart started racing. I stood up slowly, testing my hip, making sure I could move quickly if I needed to. The doorbell didn't ring. Instead, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "We're here. Front door or back?" I texted back quickly. "Front. Leaving now." I picked up my purse, gripped my cane, and walked to the door as quietly as I could. The suitcases could wait for Marcus to grab. What mattered was getting out before Vanessa realized what was happening. But as my hand touched the doorknob, I heard a door open behind me. "Mom?" Vanessa's voice was sharp with confusion. "What are you doing? Where do you think you're going at midnight?" I turned to face her. She was standing in the hallway in her silk pajamas, her expression shifting from confusion to anger as she took in the suitcases, my coat, the determination on my face. "I'm leaving," I said simply. My voice was steadier than I'd expected it to be. "Leaving? Don't be ridiculous. You can't leave. You can barely walk on your own. Where would you even go?" "To stay with my son. Marcus is outside waiting for me." The color drained from Vanessa's face, then flooded back in an angry flush. "Marcus? You called Marcus? After everything I told you about maintaining boundaries with him?" "Boundaries," I repeated, and despite everything, I almost laughed. "You want to talk to me about boundaries, Vanessa? You, who put cameras in my bathroom, who watched my most private moments and shared them with your friends for entertainment, Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Not anymore. I saw the group chat, Vanessa. The Margaret Show. I read every message, watched every video clip you and Derek and your friends shared. I know exactly what you've been doing for the past 3 months. Derek appeared behind her now, his face hard and defensive. You went through Vanessa's phone? That's a violation of privacy. The absolute audacity of that statement coming from him was almost too much to process. Privacy? You installed cameras in my bathroom, Derek. You recorded me in my most vulnerable moments and shared those recordings with your drinking buddies. And you want to lecture me about privacy? Those cameras were for your safety, Vanessa snapped, but her voice was shrill, guilty. You agreed to them. You said it was fine. I agreed because you told me they were for medical emergencies, not so you could turn my life into a reality show for your entertainment. I agreed because I trusted you, Vanessa. Because despite everything, despite all the ways you've disappointed me over the years, I still believed you were capable of basic human decency toward your own mother. The front door opened behind me, and Marcus stepped inside. He was taller than I remembered, or maybe I'd just grown smaller in the 3 years since I'd seen him. He had Bernard's eyes, warm and brown, currently blazing with protective anger as he took in the scene. Marcus, Vanessa said, her voice dripping with disdain. Of course you'd come crawling back the moment Mom has money problems. Always looking for a handout, aren't you? He didn't take the bait. His voice was calm, almost gentle, which somehow made it more devastating. I have money problems. I'm a senior architect at one of the most prestigious firms in the Pacific Northwest. James and I own our home outright. We vacation in Europe twice a year. But please tell me more about my financial situation, sister. It's been 3 years since you've bothered to know anything about my life. This isn't about you, Derek interjected, stepping forward. This is about Margaret making rash decisions in the middle of the night when she should be resting and recovering. Mom is a grown woman, Marcus said, moving to stand beside me. She's 77 years old and of completely sound mind. If she wants to leave, she leaves. You can't stop her. She's not well, Vanessa insisted. She needs supervision. She needs care. We've been providing that care. And now she's just going to throw it back in our faces because of some misunderstanding about the security cameras? Misunderstanding, I said quietly. You called it the Margaret Show, Vanessa. You and your friends spent months rating my daily activities like I was performing for your amusement. You shared videos of me struggling with my physical therapy, made jokes about my body, violated my privacy in ways I didn't even know were possible. That's not a misunderstanding. That's cruelty. That's abuse. Abuse? Vanessa's laugh was harsh and brittle. You're being dramatic. It was just harmless fun blowing off steam. You wouldn't understand the stress Derek and I have been under. Having you here. Having to rearrange our lives to accommodate your needs. Harmless fun, Marcus repeated, his voice hardening. You recorded our mother in the bathroom, Vanessa. You shared those recordings with other people. Do you have any idea how many laws you've broken? How much trouble you could be in? Are you threatening us? Derek's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Because if you think you can come in here and because what? A new voice joined the conversation. James stepped through the doorway, and I was struck by how solid and reassuring his presence was. Because you'll call the police? Please do. I'm sure they'd be very interested in seeing the contents of that group chat. The footage you've been collecting without proper consent. The violation of privacy statutes. Should we call them now, or would you rather we handle this privately? The fight went out of Derek visibly. He stepped back, his face pale. We didn't mean anything by it, he muttered. It was just between friends. Just between friends, James repeated. So, if those videos and screenshots ended up going viral, if they ended up on social media where everyone could see how you treated a 77-year-old woman recovering from major surgery, that wouldn't bother you at all? You wouldn't dare, Vanessa whispered. We wouldn't want to, James said. But if you try to prevent Margaret from leaving, if you spread rumors about her or Marcus, if you do anything to make this situation worse than it already is, those screenshots go public. Every message, every video, every violation. The whole world gets to see what kind of daughter you really are. Marcus picked up my suitcases. Mom, are you ready? I nodded, but before I could move toward the door, Vanessa's voice stopped me one more time. Fine. Go. Run back to your precious Marcus. The son who couldn't even be bothered to live his life like a normal person. But don't come crawling back to me when you need help again. Don't expect me to be there for you anymore. I turned to look at her one final time, this daughter I'd raised, this woman I barely recognized. I wouldn't dream of it, Vanessa. You've made it abundantly clear what I am to you. Not a mother. Not a person deserving of respect or dignity. Just entertainment. Just something to mock and diminish to make yourself feel superior. I would rather live alone for the rest of my life than spend another day under your roof. What about Emily? Vanessa played her final card, the one she knew would hurt. You'll never see your granddaughter again if you walk out that door. My heart clenched because I did love Emily, my sweet 12-year-old granddaughter who visited occasionally and seemed like she might grow up to be everything her mother wasn't. But I couldn't let Vanessa use her as a weapon anymore. If Emily wants a relationship with me, she can have one when she's old enough to make her own choices. But I won't let you hold my love for her hostage anymore. I won't let you control me through threats and manipulation. I'm done, Vanessa. I'm done being your punching bag, your source of entertainment, your emotional hostage. Marcus opened the door wider and I walked through it. Each step hurt my hip, but the pain was nothing compared to the relief of leaving that house, of escaping those camera eyes, of reclaiming my dignity. James followed with my suitcases and Marcus stayed at my side as we walked to their car. A sensible sedan that looked warm and safe and like the beginning of something better. As we pulled out of the driveway, I looked back at the house one time. Vanessa and Derek were standing in the doorway, backlit by the harsh interior lights. They looked smaller somehow, diminished. Their perfect house in their perfect neighborhood suddenly seemed like a prison they'd built for themselves. Walls constructed from judgment and cruelty, and the desperate need to feel superior to everyone around them. Are you okay, Mom? Marcus asked from the driver's seat, his eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. I'm better than okay, I told him and realized it was true. For the first time in 3 months, maybe for the first time in 3 years, I felt like myself again. Not someone's burden, not someone's joke, not someone's hostage. Just Margaret. A woman who'd made mistakes but was finally making things right. The drive to Seattle took just under 3 hours. Marcus and James traded off driving and keeping me company in the back seat. We didn't talk about Vanessa much. Instead, we caught up on 3 years of lost time. Marcus told me about his work, about the buildings he designed, about the awards his firm had won. James talked about his job as a high school English teacher, about his students and their essays and the small victories of helping teenagers discover their love of literature. They told me about their home, a renovated Craftsman in the Capitol Hill neighborhood with a ground floor bedroom they used as a guest room. They told me about their lives together, the mundane beautiful details I'd missed out on because I'd been too afraid to stand up to Vanessa. Sunday morning farmers markets. Their cat, a massive orange tabby named Chaucer. The community theater where they both volunteered. Game nights with friends. The garden James had been cultivating in their backyard. All the texture and richness of a life fully lived. A life I'd been excluded from because of my own cowardice. I'm sorry, I said at one point, the words bursting out of me. I'm so sorry for cutting you out, for choosing Vanessa over you, for missing so much of your life. I was weak and scared and I made the wrong choice. Marcus reached back from the passenger seat and squeezed my hand. We have time now, Mom. That's what matters. We have time to rebuild what was broken. And we will, I promise you. We will. We arrived at their house just after 3 in the morning. It was a beautiful old home with a wraparound porch and stained glass windows that glowed softly in the streetlight. James carried my suitcases while Marcus helped me up the front steps, patient with my slow pace, his hand steady under my elbow. The inside was everything I'd imagined Marcus would create. Warm and welcoming, filled with books and art and comfortable furniture that invited you to sit and stay a while. The walls were painted in soft colors, sage green and warm cream and gentle blue. Photographs covered every available surface, pictures of Marcus and James, of places they'd traveled, of friends and family. I noticed with a pang that there were no pictures of me, no pictures of Vanessa. We'd been erased from their home just as effectively as Marcus had been erased from ours. The guest room was on the ground floor, just off the main hallway. It had its own bathroom, thank God, because the thought of anyone installing cameras ever again made my skin crawl. The room was painted a soft yellow that reminded me of sunrise, and the bed was already made up with a quilt that looked handmade. Your room, Marcus said simply, setting my suitcases down by the closet. For as long as you need it. Forever if you want. This is your home now, Mom. Our home. I started crying then, the emotional exhaustion of the day finally catching up with me. Marcus held me while I cried the way I used to hold him when he was small and the world felt too big and scary. James tactfully disappeared to make tea, giving us this moment of reconnection, of healing. When I finally stopped crying, Marcus helped me get settled. He showed me where everything was in the bathroom, made sure I had water and my medications within reach, set up a baby monitor on the nightstand so I could call for help if I needed it during the night. Not cameras, just a simple audio monitor that I could control, that I could turn off whenever I wanted privacy. Get some rest, he said, kissing my forehead. We'll figure everything else out tomorrow. But tonight just sleep. You're safe here, Mom. I promise you're safe. I believed him. For the first time in months I felt truly safe. I climbed into bed and despite everything, despite the trauma and betrayal and upheaval of the evening, I fell asleep almost immediately. No camera eyes watching me. No red lights blinking in the corners. Just darkness and peace and the sound of an old house settling around me like a protective embrace. I woke late the next morning to sunlight streaming through the yellow curtains and the smell of coffee drifting down the hallway. Real coffee, strong and rich the way Bernard used to make it. I got up slowly, testing my hip, pleased to find that it hurt less than usual. Maybe it was the comfortable bed, or maybe it was the absence of stress and constant surveillance. Either way, I felt more rested than I had in months. I made my way to the kitchen, following the sound of voices and clinking dishes. Marcus and James were both there. Marcus reading the newspaper at the kitchen table while James stood at the stove cooking what smelled like pancakes. They both looked up when I entered, their faces breaking into warm smiles. Good morning, James said. I hope you like blueberry pancakes. They're my specialty. They smell wonderful, I told him, settling into the chair Marcus pulled out for me. This whole place is wonderful. Thank you for taking me in on such short notice. Mom, you're not a charity case, Marcus said firmly. You're my mother and I love you. I should have fought harder to maintain our relationship 3 years ago. I should have shown up at your door, refused to be pushed away. I let Vanessa intimidate me into backing off, and I've regretted it every day since. We both made mistakes, I said. But we have a chance to fix them now. Speaking of which, James said, sliding a plate of pancakes in front of me, we need to talk about next steps. Your medical care, your recovery plan, your cottage back in Riverside. There's a lot to figure out. So, we spent that morning and much of the afternoon making plans. Marcus had already called his office and taken a week of personal leave to help me get settled. James had lined up a colleague to cover his classes for a few days. They'd thought of everything, researched everything, prepared for my arrival with a thoroughness that made my heart ache with gratitude. First priority was finding me a doctor in Seattle who could take over my recovery care. James had already compiled a list of orthopedic specialists who came highly recommended and had experience with elderly patients recovering from hip fractures. We'd make appointments for initial consultations next week. Second, we needed to figure out the situation with my cottage. I was still making mortgage payments on it, still responsible for its upkeep, but I obviously couldn't live there alone yet. Maybe not ever, depending on how my recovery progressed. Marcus suggested we hire a property management company to maintain it while I stayed in Seattle, keep an eye on things, make sure the pipes didn't freeze in winter, that sort of thing. Third, and this was the delicate one, we needed to address the legal situation with Vanessa and Derek. What they'd done with those cameras wasn't just morally wrong. It was potentially criminal. James had a friend who was an attorney specializing in privacy law, and he'd already reached out to set up a consultation. We needed to understand our options, what kind of legal recourse I had, whether pursuing charges was wise or even possible. I don't want revenge, I told them as we discussed this over lunch. I just want to make sure they can't do this to anyone else. I want them to understand that what they did was wrong, that there are consequences for treating people the way they treated me. That's not revenge, Marcus said gently. That's accountability. And you have every right to pursue it. My phone rang in the middle of our planning session. I looked at the screen and felt my stomach clench. Vanessa. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again 5 minutes later. Again I ignored it. The third time Marcus took the phone from me. Do you want me to block her number? Not yet, I said. Let her stew for a while. Let her wonder what I'm doing, whether I'm going to take legal action, whether her perfect reputation is about to be destroyed. Let her feel a fraction of the anxiety and fear she put me through. The voicemails started piling up. I didn't listen to them, but Marcus did, his face growing darker with each one. The first few were angry, accusatory, blaming me for overreacting and Marcus for manipulating me. Then they shifted to defensive, trying to justify the cameras and the group chat as harmless stress relief. By the evening, they'd become pleading. Mom, please call me back. We need to talk about this. You're being unreasonable. I'm your daughter. Doesn't that mean anything? The audacity was breathtaking. After everything she'd done, she was trying to play the victim, trying to make me feel guilty for leaving, for standing up for myself. It might have worked 3 months ago or 3 years ago, but something had broken in me when I read that group chat, or maybe something had finally healed. Either way, I wasn't falling for her manipulation anymore. That evening, Marcus's attorney friend, a sharp woman named Rebecca Chun, came by the house for an initial consultation. She reviewed the screenshots I'd taken from Vanessa's phone, her expression growing more serious with each swipe. This is bad, she said finally. Recording someone in a bathroom without their explicit consent is illegal in Washington state, even if the person initially agreed to cameras elsewhere in the home. The fact that they shared these recordings with others, that there's a documented pattern of harassment and mockery, that strengthens your case considerably. What are my options? I asked. You could pursue criminal charges. Voyeurism, invasion of privacy, potentially harassment depending on how far we want to push it. You could also file a civil suit for damages, emotional distress, violation of privacy rights. That could get expensive for them quickly, especially if this goes public and affects their reputations. Rebecca paused, studying my face. But I have to ask Mrs. Morrison, what do you actually want out of this? Because that will determine our strategy. I thought about it for a long moment. What did I want? Vanessa in jail? No, as angry as I was, I didn't want that. Her financial ruin? That felt too much like revenge, too petty. What I wanted was simpler and somehow more profound. I want them to stop, I said finally. I want the cameras destroyed, the recordings deleted, every trace of that group chat eliminated. I want a written apology acknowledging what they did wrong. And I want them to understand that if they ever try something like this again with anyone, there will be serious consequences. Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. That's reasonable. I can draft a cease and desist letter that outlines exactly what we have, what charges we could pursue, and what we're requiring them to do to avoid legal action. It's essentially a legal threat, but a credible one. If they comply, you walk away. If they don't, we have all the ammunition we need to make their lives very difficult. Do it, I said. And Rebecca, make sure the letter is crystal clear about one thing. They are never, under any circumstances, to contact me again unless I initiate that contact. No calls, no texts, no showing up at Marcus's house. I'm done being their target. Over the next few days, I settled into life at Marcus and James's house. It was surprisingly easy, like putting on a favorite sweater you'd forgotten you owned. They had a rhythm to their household, a gentle routine that I slipped into naturally. Marcus left for work around 8, James around 7:30. I'd spend my mornings doing physical therapy exercises, reading in the sunroom James had converted into a mini library, or puttering around the kitchen baking things I hadn't had time to bake in years. James would come home around 4 and we'd have tea together talking about his day, his students, the books he was teaching. Marcus usually arrived by 6, and the three of us would cook dinner together, trading off responsibilities, laughing at inside jokes I was beginning to understand. After dinner, we'd watch movies or play board games or just sit together reading, enjoying the companionable silence that came from being with people who actually liked you, who wanted you around. It was healing in ways I hadn't expected. Not just my hip, though that was improving steadily with proper physical therapy and lower stress levels, but my spirit, my sense of self, the parts of me that had been damaged by Vanessa's cruelty and my own guilt and fear. Being around Marcus and James, seeing their love for each other, and their effortless inclusion of me in their life, reminded me what family was supposed to feel like. One evening, about a week after I'd moved in, Emily called. Vanessa must have finally told her what happened, or maybe Emily had overheard arguments and pieced it together herself. She was crying, her young voice confused and hurt. "Grandma, why did you leave? Mom says you chose Uncle Marcus over us, that you don't want to be part of our family anymore." That's not true, I told her gently. I left because your mother and I had a disagreement about how I should be treated. But I still love you, Emily. I always will. Can you tell me what happened? She sounded so young, so lost, and my heart broke for her. I can't tell you all the details, sweetheart. Those are between your mother and me. But I can tell you that I'm safe and happy where I am. And that if you want to have a relationship with me, I would love that. You can call me anytime, visit when you're older, and can make your own decisions about who you want in your life. But I understand if your mother makes that difficult right now. She's really angry, Emily whispered. She keeps saying you betrayed her, that Uncle Marcus poisoned your mind against her. She says you'll regret this. Emily, I want you to understand something important. Adults sometimes have complicated relationships, and sometimes those relationships become unhealthy. That doesn't mean anyone is entirely good or entirely bad. Your mother loves you, I'm sure of that. But the way she was treating me wasn't okay, and I had to leave to protect myself. That doesn't mean I don't love you, or that I'm trying to hurt anyone. It just means I'm taking care of myself the way everyone deserves to be taken care of. Do you understand? I think so, she said, though she still sounded uncertain. Can I really call you? Anytime. I gave her my number, made her repeat it back to me, made her promise she'd save it somewhere her mother wouldn't find and delete it. And Emily, if you ever need someone to talk to, if things get hard at home or you just need advice, I'm here. Always. After we hung up, I sat holding the phone, wondering if I'd said the right things, if I'd damaged my relationship with my granddaughter irreparably. Marcus found me there and pulled me into a hug. You did good, Mom. You told her the truth without poisoning her against Vanessa. That's all you can do. The rest is up to Emily to figure out as she grows up. Rebecca's cease and desist letter arrived at Vanessa and Derek's house exactly 2 weeks after I'd left. Rebecca had crafted it beautifully, laying out every violation in stark legal language, attaching selected screenshots as evidence, and making it abundantly clear what would happen if they didn't comply with our demands. The cameras had to be removed immediately. All recordings had to be deleted and proof of deletion provided. The group chat had to be terminated and all participants informed that sharing the content further would result in legal action. And a written apology had to be delivered within 30 days. The response came faster than I expected. Derek called Marcus's number at 9 in the morning 3 days after receiving the letter. Marcus put him on speaker so I could hear. We're complying with everything in the letter, Derek said. His voice was tight, angry, but also scared. The cameras are already gone. I've deleted all the recordings from our devices and cloud storage. Vanessa has deleted the group chat and contacted everyone who was in it to let them know they need to delete everything too. And the apology? Marcus asked. We're working on it. Derek's tone suggested this was the part he was struggling with most. But it will be delivered within the deadline. Is there anything else, or can we consider this matter closed? That depends, I said, speaking for the first time. Derek, I want you to understand something. What you and Vanessa did to me wasn't just wrong. It was cruel in a way I'm still trying to process. You took advantage of my vulnerability, violated my privacy in the most intimate ways possible, and turned my suffering into entertainment. That's not something a simple apology erases. I know, he said quietly. For what it's worth, I am sorry. I didn't think about how it would feel from your perspective. We just got caught up in having something to laugh about, and we didn't consider that we were laughing at a real person with real feelings. The fact that you had to be threatened with legal action to realize that tells me everything I need to know about your character, I said. But I'm willing to let this end here if you honor the terms of the letter. No more contact unless I initiate it. No spreading rumors or trying to turn other family members against me. You leave me alone to rebuild my life, and I'll leave you alone to think about the kind of people you want to be. Agreed, Derek said. And Margaret, for what it's worth, Vanessa is struggling with this. She does love you in her way. She just has a hard time showing it appropriately. Love doesn't surveil, I said. Love doesn't mock. Love doesn't violate boundaries and then call it care. Whatever Vanessa feels for me, I'm not sure I'd call it love anymore. The apology arrived 28 days later, 2 days before the deadline. It was typed, formal, and clearly drafted with Rebecca's letter in mind, hitting all the legal points without much genuine emotion. But there was a handwritten note attached, in Vanessa's distinctive slanted script. Mom, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can fix this. I've spent the past month trying to understand how things got so bad between us, and I keep coming back to the same realization. I don't know how to love people without trying to control them. I don't know how to accept help without resenting the person who needs it. I don't know how to be the daughter you deserved. Maybe I never did. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even sure I deserve the chance to ask. But I want you to know that I see what I did, and I understand why you left. I understand why you chose Marcus. He's always been the better child, the kinder one, the one who inherited Dad's gentleness instead of my sharp edges. I hope you're happy where you are. I hope Marcus and James take care of you the way I should have. And I hope someday, maybe years from now, we can find a way back to each other. But I understand if that never happens. I understand if I destroyed something that can't be rebuilt. I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it. For the cameras, for the mockery, for every way I failed you over the years. I'm sorry I wasn't the daughter you deserved. I read the note 3 times, looking for manipulation, for hidden barbs, for the trap I'd learned to expect from Vanessa. But all I found was sadness and regret and a glimmer of self-awareness that might someday grow into something better. It's a start, Marcus said when I showed it to him. Not enough to rebuild on yet, but a start. Do you want to respond? Not yet, I told him. Maybe not ever. But I'll keep the note. Just in case someday I'm ready to see if she meant it. 6 months passed before I saw Vanessa again. And it wasn't because I sought her out. Emily had her 13th birthday party, and she'd specifically requested that I be invited. Marcus drove me down to Riverside, staying close by in case I needed a quick exit, but giving me space to navigate the gathering on my own terms. The party was held at a park pavilion, neutral territory that felt safer than Vanessa's house. Emily ran to me the moment I arrived, throwing her arms around me with the unself-conscious affection of a child who hadn't yet learned to guard her heart. I'd missed her desperately. This bright spark of goodness in a complicated family situation. Vanessa stood near the picnic tables, watching our reunion with an expression I couldn't quite read. She looked older somehow, thinner, with lines around her mouth that hadn't been there before. Derek wasn't present, and I learned later they'd separated 2 months ago. The strain of the scandal and his own guilt apparently too much for their marriage to survive. We didn't speak much at the party, Vanessa and I. Just polite acknowledgements, careful distance, the awkward dance of 2 people who shared history but no longer shared trust. But as I was leaving, she walked me to Marcus's car, her hands twisted together nervously. You look well, she said quietly. Seattle agrees with you. It does. Marcus and James have been wonderful. I'm glad. She paused, seeming to gather courage. Mom, I've been seeing a therapist, working through a lot of things about control and fear and why I treated you the way I did. I'm not making excuses, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to understand it, to be better. That's good, Vanessa. I genuinely hope it helps you. Do you think she started then stopped? Do you think someday we might be able to talk? Really talk, not just polite small talk at Emily's events? I don't know, I told her honestly. Maybe, but not yet. I'm still healing from what happened, and I need more time before I'm ready to let you back in, even a little bit. She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. I understand. Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know that I'm working on myself, that I want to be someone you could be proud of again someday. We left it there, this fragile possibility hanging between us like a spider's web, delicate and easily destroyed but present nonetheless. Back in Seattle, my life had found a rhythm that felt sustainable and even joyful. My hip had healed enough that I could walk without a cane most days, though I kept one handy for longer distances or tired evenings. I'd started volunteering at a senior center, teaching watercolor painting classes to other people my age who were looking for creative outlets and community. Marcus and James had made it clear I could stay as long as I wanted, that their home was my home. But I'd also started thinking about my cottage in Riverside, about whether I might be able to return there someday with modifications that would make it safer for an aging woman living alone. Grab bars and ramps, a first-floor bedroom, maybe a companion to help with heavy tasks and provide company. The camera incident had taught me something valuable about vulnerability and trust. Being vulnerable wasn't the problem. Being vulnerable with people who didn't value you, who saw your needs as burdens rather than opportunities to show love, that was the problem. With the right people, vulnerability could be a bridge to deeper connection rather than an invitation for exploitation. I'd also learned that family wasn't always the people you were born to. Sometimes family was the people who chose you, who showed up when you called, who flew 3 hours in the middle of the night because you needed them. Marcus was my family. James was my family. The friends I'd made in Seattle, the other artists and seniors and kind strangers who'd welcomed me into their circles, they were family too. One evening, as the three of us sat on the back porch watching James's garden bloom in the late spring sunshine, Marcus asked me the question I'd been waiting for. Mom, what do you want? Not what you think we want, not what's easiest or most convenient. What do you actually want for the next chapter of your life? I thought about it carefully, sipping the lemonade James had made from lemons grown in that very garden. I want my cottage back, I said finally, but not the way it was. I want it modified so I can age there safely. I want someone living with me, maybe another widow or divorced woman who needs affordable housing and wouldn't mind helping with yard work and heavy lifting in exchange for reduced rent. I want to be part of my old community again, but with the knowledge that I have a safety net here with you if I need it. Then that's what we'll make happen, James said immediately. We can hire contractors, find you a compatible housemate, set up a rotation where one of us visits every couple weeks to make sure you're okay. You don't have to choose between independence and security, Margaret. You can have both. And so that's what I did. It took 3 months of planning and renovation, but by early fall I was moving back into my cottage. The modifications were extensive but thoughtful. A bedroom and full bathroom added to the ground floor. Ramps instead of stairs at every entrance. A medical alert system with fall detection. And living in the upstairs bedrooms, a woman named Ruth who'd lost her husband 2 years prior and was struggling to afford housing on her fixed income. Ruth and I became fast friends, two widows who understood loneliness and loss, who could give each other space when needed and company when wanted. She tended the garden while I painted watercolors of the flowers she grew. We cooked meals together, watched old movies, went to the local senior center for activities. It wasn't the life I'd had with Bernard, but it was a good life, one built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Marcus and James visited every other weekend, bringing groceries and laughter and updates on their busy Seattle lives. Emily called me weekly. These long rambling conversations about school and friends and her own growing understanding of her mother's flaws and strengths. Even Vanessa and I had progressed to occasional phone calls, brief and still somewhat stilted but civil. Healing, I was learning, didn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just meant finding peace with what was and building something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed. The cameras were gone, the group chat was deleted, and the woman who'd been mocked and surveilled had reclaimed her dignity and her life. I was 78 years old, living independently in my own home, surrounded by people who valued me, creating art that brought me joy, helping other seniors find their creative voices. The fire that had been meant to humiliate me had instead burned away everything false, leaving only what was real and true and worth keeping. Some stories end with dramatic confrontations or perfect reconciliations. Mine ended with quiet restoration, with small daily choices to build a life worth living, with the recognition that being seen and valued by the right people mattered more than being accepted by everyone. The cameras had shown Vanessa and Derek who they thought I was, helpless and pathetic and worthy only of mockery. But the real me, the woman who'd survived their cruelty and chosen herself over their convenience, that woman was stronger than anyone had given her credit for. Strong enough to leave, strong enough to start over, strong enough to forgive without forgetting, strong enough to build a new life from the ruins of the old. And every morning when I woke up in my cottage, in my modified bedroom with the sunrise painting the walls gold, I thanked whatever forces had given me the courage to read that group chat, to make that phone call to Marcus, to walk out Vanessa's door into an uncertain but ultimately better future. The cameras were gone, but I'd finally learned to see myself clearly, and that made all the difference. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.